I still remember the day everything we thought we knew about combat, about strength, about survival itself, got thrown out the airlock and incinerated in a star's corona. My name is Vex'thor, and I have analyzed combat data for the Vrothian Empire for 73 cycles. I have watched thousands of fights, dissected millions of tactical decisions, and predicted outcomes with 97% accuracy. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened at the Galactic Gauntlet on Station Kronax. Let me tell you about the tournament that made every species in the galaxy collectively soil their exosuits. The Galactic Gauntlet was not some friendly competition where participants shook appendages afterward and shared fermented beverages. Oh no. This was the most brutal no-holds-barred combat tournament in 7 sectors, where champions came to prove their species' superiority through violence, skill, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The prize was 50 million credits and the title of Supreme Warrior, but more importantly, it earned your entire species respect, fear, and a seat at the table when the Galactic Council discussed military matters. Station Kronax floated in neutral space, a massive ring of steel and composite materials that housed the arena at its center. The fighting pit was a perfect circle, 100 meters in diameter, surrounded by energy shields that kept the combatants in and the spectators safe. Well, mostly safe. There had been incidents. When I arrived for tournament season, the usual suspects were already present. The Thoraxians, built like walking mountains of muscle and chitin, each one massing at least 400 kilograms. The Kelnorians, 6-limbed speed demons whose reflexes made them look like blurs when they fought. The Zephrites, with their crystalline exoskeletons that could deflect most energy weapons and whose strength-to-weight ratio was legendary. And of course, the reigning champion, a Kragnoth named Brul'thar, who had held the title for 3 consecutive cycles and had never been knocked down, much less defeated. 64 fighters. Single elimination. No weapons. No armor. Just biology, skill, and will. The betting pools were already forming, with Brul'thar as the overwhelming favorite, followed by a Thoraxian bruiser named Grendax and a Zephrite warrior called Trix'nal. The oddsmakers were running their calculations, cross-referencing past performance data, analyzing muscle mass and reaction times. That is when I saw her name on the roster. Cassidy Raines. Human. Female. Earth. I actually laughed. Out loud. Several of my colleagues joined me. Humans were the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel, barely a generation into galactic society. They were small, soft, fragile things that came from a world with embarrassingly low gravity. Their planet was barely one standard gravitational unit. They had no natural armor, no venom, no redundant organs, no enhanced sensory capabilities. They were not even particularly fast or strong by galactic standards. And they wanted to compete in the gauntlet? The reaction throughout the arena was similar. Amusement. Dismissal. Outright mockery. Some species saw it as an insult that humans even dared to enter. The Thoraxians found it hilarious. One of them, Grendax himself, made a public statement that he hoped to face the humans so he could, quote, step on the soft skin and hear it pop, unquote. The crowd found this hysterical. The opening ceremonies began with the traditional parade of champions. Each fighter entered the arena to the cheers or jeers of their supporters. When Brul'thar entered, the noise was deafening. His gray skin rippled with barely contained power, his 4 arms flexing as he raised them to acknowledge the crowd. He stood nearly 3 meters tall and looked like he could punch through a starship hull. Then came Cassidy Raines. She walked into that arena like she owned it, and let me tell you, the contrast was almost comedic. She stood maybe 1.7 meters tall, with a lean build that looked positively scrawny compared to the behemoths surrounding her. Her skin was a medium brown tone, her hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and she wore the standard combat suit that all participants received, a simple gray bodysuit that provided modesty but no protection. The crowd started laughing before she even reached her designated spot. She did not react. Her face remained neutral, almost bored, as she scanned the other fighters with dark eyes that seemed to calculate and dismiss them in the same glance. There was something in her posture, a relaxed confidence that seemed completely at odds with her situation. She looked like someone waiting for public transport, not someone about to fight for her life against the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. "Look at the tiny human," someone shouted from the stands. Careful, you don't get stepped on, little thing. More laughter. Even some of the other fighters were grinning, their various facial structures twisting into expressions of amused contempt. Cassidy glanced up toward the heckler, smiled, a small, sharp smile that did not reach her eyes, and then turned her attention back to the tournament officials. That smile sent an odd chill down my dorsal ridge, though I could not explain why at the time. The bracket was announced. First-round matches were randomized to ensure fairness, or at least as much fairness as you could expect when a Thoraxian might face a much smaller opponent. The pairings appeared on the massive holographic display above the arena. Cassidy Raines versus Throk'mar the Destroyer. Oh, the crowd loved that. Throk'mar was a Thoraxian, naturally, 3.2 meters of solid muscle and attitude. He had earned his nickname by literally destroying his opponents, breaking bones, rupturing organs, leaving them as medical emergencies rather than just defeated combatants. His record was 47 wins, 0 losses, 33 of those wins by knockout, 10 by submission, and 4 by killing his opponent before the referees could intervene. Against a human who looked like a stiff breeze might knock her over. The betting odds for that match were running at 50-1 against the human. I did not bet. I should have. They entered the arena for the first round bout. Throk'mar was playing to the crowd, roaring and beating his chest plates, making the ground shake with each stomp of his massive feet. He pointed at Cassidy with one clawed hand and drew his thumb across his throat in the universal gesture for death. Cassidy stretched, rolled her shoulders, bounced on her toes a few times. She looked like someone warming up for a morning jog, not a fight to the death. The referee, a neutral exalith with no stake in any outcome, held up one crystalline hand. Combatants ready? Throk'mar roared his affirmation. Cassidy nodded once. Fight. Throk'mar charged immediately, exactly as everyone expected. Thoraxians were not known for their tactical subtlety. They were known for running at their opponents and turning them into paste. His footfalls were like thunder, each step covering 3 meters, his massive arms spread wide to grab the human and crush her. Cassidy waited. She stood completely still, watching him come, and I remember thinking that she had frozen in fear, that her nerve had failed, that in 3 seconds this would be over. 2 meters away. 1 meter. She moved. Not away. Toward him. She exploded forward in a burst of speed that seemed impossible from a standing start, dropping low and sliding between his legs before he could adjust. His claws swept through empty air where she had been standing a fraction of a second before. She came up behind him, and before Throk'mar could turn, she had leaped onto his back. What happened next occurred so fast that the arena's recording systems had to slow it down to quarter speed for the analysis. Cassidy's legs wrapped around Throk'mar's thick neck, one arm hooked under his chin, and she twisted her entire body with a violence that seemed to come from nowhere. Thoraxian necks are strong, reinforced with cartilage plates that can support massive loads. They are not supposed to bend sideways. Hers did. There was a sound like a tree branch snapping. Throk'mar's roar cut off mid-bellow. His legs buckled. All 3.2 meters and 400 kilograms of him crashed to the arena floor with an impact that rattled my teeth. Cassidy rode him down, maintained her grip until he stopped moving, then released and rolled smoothly to her feet. The entire exchange had taken perhaps 4 seconds from the moment she moved. The arena went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, struck mute by what they had just witnessed. The referee rushed over to check on Throk'mar. After a moment, he held up his hand. Throk'mar is unconscious. Winner, Cassidy Raines. The silence broke. Not with cheers. With shocked murmuring, confused chatter, and the sound of several thousand beings trying to process what they had seen. That was not supposed to happen. Thoraxians did not go down in 4 seconds. Humans were not supposed to move like that. Cassidy walked out of the arena without acknowledging the crowd, her expression unchanged. I pulled up the replay immediately, analyzed every frame. Her initial burst of speed had accelerated her body to nearly 15 meters per second in less than 1 meter of distance. The force she had generated in that twist was over 2,000 newtons. Her precision was perfect, targeting the exact vertebral junction where Thoraxian anatomy was weakest. This was not luck. This was expertise. The other fighters noticed too. I watched their reactions as they reviewed the footage. The amusement was gone, replaced by calculation and, in some cases, worry. Brul'thar watched the replay 3 times, his 4 arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The tournament continued. Other fights played out as expected. Grendax destroyed his opponent, another Thoraxian, in a brutal slugfest. Trix'nal used her Zephrite speed and crystal hard strikes to overwhelm a Kelnorian. Brul'thar dismantled his opponent with clinical efficiency. Second-round pairings were announced. Cassidy Raines vs. Zix'tal the Swift. Zix'tal was a Kelnorian, one of the 6-limbed speed fighters I mentioned earlier. Where Throk'mar had been all power and mass, Zix'tal was velocity and volume of attacks. Kelnorians could throw 30 strikes per second, moving their limbs in blurs that most species could not even track. Their fighting style was overwhelming, simply attacking from multiple angles faster than opponents could defend. Zix'tal was confident. Overconfident, actually. He spent his pre-fight interview explaining how the human had gotten lucky against a slow, stupid Thoraxian, but against a real fighter with real speed, she would be exposed as a fraud. The odds were still against Cassidy, but not 50-1 anymore. 20-1. Some people were learning. They entered the arena. Zix'tal immediately began his intimidation display, moving in rapid circles around Cassidy, his 6 limbs creating a whirlwind of motion, showing off his speed. It was impressive, genuinely impressive. I had seen him defeat opponents who never landed a single blow because they simply could not keep up with him. Cassidy turned slowly, tracking him with her eyes, her body loose and ready. She was not impressed. The fight began. Zix'tal attacked instantly, closing the distance in a blink, all 6 limbs striking at once toward Cassidy's head, torso, and legs. It should have been impossible to defend against. Too many attacks from too many angles, too quickly. Cassidy was not there when his strikes arrived. She had moved backward, exactly far enough that his claws whistled through the air centimeters from her face. Before he could reset, she stepped in, inside his reach, and struck him 3 times in rapid succession. Palm to his center mass. Elbow to his ribs. Knee to what I can only describe as his solar plexus equivalent. Each strike was precise, targeted, devastating. Zix'tal staggered backward, the wind knocked out of him, his speed interrupted. Cassidy did not let him recover. She moved with him, maintaining pressure, and here is what was remarkable. She was not faster than him. Analysis showed her strikes were actually slower than his in terms of pure velocity. But she was always in the right place, anticipating where he would move, cutting off his angles, negating his speed advantage through positioning and timing. It was like watching a master chess player defeat a supercomputer. Not by calculating faster, but by understanding the game better. Zix'tal tried to create distance, to reset and use his speed again. Cassidy stayed on him like a shadow, never letting him build momentum. She struck his lead leg, buckling it. Grabbed one of his arms and used his own forward motion to throw him to the ground. Before he could scramble up, she was on his back, one arm wrapped around his throat, applying pressure. Kelnorian biology does not handle blood chokes well. Their equivalent of a carotid artery is close to the surface and easy to compress if you know where to find it. Cassidy knew. 5 seconds. Zix'tal tapped out frantically, his free limbs slapping the ground in submission. The referee called it immediately. Submission. Winner, Cassidy Raines. The crowd was not laughing anymore. The shocked murmuring was louder now, mixed with something else. Concern. Fear, even. Several fights into the tournament, and the human had not been hit once. Not one single time. I was reviewing footage obsessively now, trying to understand what I was seeing. Her fighting style was like nothing in our databases. It combined elements from multiple disciplines, striking, grappling, and ground fighting, but synthesized them into something uniquely effective. More than that, she was reading her opponents perfectly, adapting in real time to their strengths and exploiting their weaknesses. During an interview after the fight, someone asked Cassidy how she had defeated a Kelnorian known for his speed. She actually shrugged and said, "Speed is not useful if you are going the wrong direction." He was fast, sure. But predictable. Patterns are easy to counter once you see them. The interviewer asked if she was confident about her next match. "I am here to win," she said simply. "Not to participate. To win." The semifinals arrived faster than expected. The remaining fighters were the tournament's elite. Brul'thar, the champion, had crushed his way through his bracket without breaking a sweat. Grendax, the Thoraxian, had lived up to his reputation by brutalizing his opponents. Trix'nal, the Zephrite, whose crystalline strikes had shattered bones and armor plating alike. And Cassidy Raines, the human who should not be here. The pairings came down to a random draw from the remaining four. Cassidy Raines versus Trix'nal Shardbreaker. This was it. The moment everyone was waiting for. Trix'nal was a legitimate contender, second favorite to win the entire tournament. Her Zephrite biology made her incredibly difficult to hurt. Her crystalline exoskeleton could absorb and distribute impact force across her entire body. Striking her was like punching a diamond statue. And her own strikes could shatter steel plates. The pre-fight analysis gave Cassidy almost no chance. How do you defeat an opponent you cannot hurt? They faced each other in the arena. Trix'nal stood 2.4 meters tall, her body glittering under the lights, facets catching and refracting illumination into rainbow patterns. She looked like a living sculpture, beautiful and deadly. Cassidy looked tiny across from her. Fragile. Breakable. The fight started. Trix'nal advanced methodically, not charging like Throk'mar or dancing like Zix'tal, but moving with controlled purpose. She threw a testing jab, her crystalline fist cutting through the air with a sound like breaking glass. Cassidy slipped it by millimeters, did not try to block. Smart. Blocking a Zephrite punch could break bones even if the punch missed its target. Trix'nal threw a combination, 1-2-3, probing Cassidy's defense. Each time, the human evaded by the smallest margin necessary, never wasting movement, never creating openings. This continued for nearly a full minute, Trix'nal attacking, Cassidy evading, neither landing a significant blow. The crowd was getting restless, expecting more action. But I was watching closely, and I saw what was happening. Cassidy was learning. Studying. Measuring Trix'nal's reach, timing, and preferred angles of attack. She was treating the first minute as an extended data collection exercise. Then she switched tactics. Instead of evading backward, she evaded forward and to the side, ending up on Trix'nal's flank. Before the Zephrite could turn, Cassidy struck, not at her body, but at her knee joint, the one place where Zephrite armor had to flex and was therefore thinner. Trix'nal grunted in pain and surprise. The strike had actually hurt her. Cassidy did not give her time to process. She moved like water, flowing around Trix'nal's attempts to face her, always staying just out of direct line of sight, always striking at joints, at gaps in the crystalline armor, at the weak points that every biology has. Ankles. Elbows. The back of the knee. The base of the neck. None of the strikes was devastating individually. But they added up. Death by 1,000 cuts, except these cuts were calculated trauma to specific vulnerable points. Trix'nal was slowing, favoring her left leg, her right arm not extending fully. She tried to grab Cassidy, to use her superior reach and strength to end this, but the human was always moving, always just out of reach, only entering striking range to land another precise blow before dancing away. It was masterful. Frustrating to watch if you were cheering for Trix'nal, I imagine, but masterful nonetheless. Finally, Trix'nal's left leg buckled from accumulated damage. She dropped to one knee, and that was all the opening Cassidy needed. She moved behind the Zephrite, leaped onto her back, and got both arms around her neck in a hold that looked almost gentle. It was not gentle. It was a blood choke, the same technique she had used on Zix'tal, adapted for Zephrite anatomy. Trix'nal struggled, tried to throw her off, but her movements were sluggish now, her damaged joints not responding properly. 10 seconds. 15. Her struggles weakened. At 20 seconds, she tapped out. The arena exploded. Half the crowd was cheering, the other half was arguing, shouting, processing what they had witnessed. A human, a soft, fragile human from a low-gravity world, had just defeated one of the most dangerous fighters in the galaxy. Cassidy released the hold immediately, stepped back, and offered Trix'nal a hand up. The Zephrite stared at the offered hand for a long moment, then took it, allowing the much smaller human to help her to her feet. "You are good," Trix'nal said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet arena. "Better than good. I underestimated humans." "We all did." Cassidy nodded. "Most species do. Usually only once, though." The finals were set. Brul'thar versus Cassidy Raines. Champion versus challenger. Kragnoth versus human. The betting pools were in chaos. Brul'thar was still favored, but the odds had shifted dramatically. People who had laughed at Cassidy's entry were now wondering if she might actually win. I spent the time between the semifinals and finals reviewing every scrap of data I could find on human biology, human combat sports, and human warfare. What I found was terrifying once I understood the context. Humans come from a 1.0 gravity world. That much we knew. What we did not appreciate was what that meant in practical terms. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds between 0.7 and 0.9 standard gravity. Humans had been living their entire evolutionary history in what we would consider high gravity. Every step they took, every movement they made, was weighted training. When Cassidy moved in the arena, she was moving in approximately 0.8 standard gravity, because Station Chronax was calibrated to the galactic average. She was essentially 15 to 20% stronger and faster than she would be on Earth, simply because she was not fighting against as much gravitational pull. But it was more than that. Human evolution had been driven by persistence, by endurance, by the ability to outlast rather than overpower. They evolved to track prey for days, to run their prey to exhaustion before killing it. Their bodies were designed for sustained effort over long periods. And their combat sports. Oh, their combat sports. Humans had dozens of them. Striking arts. Grappling arts. Mixed styles that combined everything. They had spent thousands of years of their recorded history fighting each other, refining techniques, testing what worked, and discarding what did not. They had pressure-tested their martial knowledge in ways most species never had because most species were not as obsessed with combat as humans were. Cassidy Raines had not just trained in one human fighting style. Her background includes black belts in 3 different disciplines, championship titles in 2 others, military combat training, and 8 years of what humans call mixed martial arts at the professional level on Earth. She had not come here on a whim. She had come here to prove a point. The finals began at peak viewing time, when the maximum number of beings across the galaxy would be watching. The arena was packed beyond capacity, with millions more watching via holographic feed. Brul'thar entered first, and the crowd roared. He was everything a champion should look like, massive, powerful, undefeated. His gray skin rippled with muscle that had been enhanced through years of combat and training. His forearms gave him advantages in both striking and grappling that no 2-armed opponent could match. He had defeated challengers from every major warrior species in the galaxy. Cassidy entered to a much more mixed reaction. Some cheers, some boos, a lot of nervous anticipation. She looked exactly as she had for every previous fight, calm, focused, ready. They met in the center of the arena for the traditional pre-fight protocol. Brul'thar looked down at her from his 3-meter height advantage. "You have done well to reach this point, human. But this is where your story ends. I have fought opponents from every corner of the galaxy. You are skilled, but you cannot defeat me." Cassidy tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You know what the thing about being champion is? Everyone studies your fights. Everyone knows your patterns, your preferences, your habits. You are very good at what you do, but you are predictable. And predictable can be beaten." Brul'thar's eyes narrowed. "We shall see." They returned to their corners. The referee raised his hand. The arena held its collective breath. Fight. Brul'thar did not charge. He had learned from watching the other fights. He advanced carefully, all 4 arms up in a tight guard, cutting off angles, not giving Cassidy easy openings. Smart. Patient. This was why he was champion. Cassidy circled, feinting occasionally, testing his reactions. The first 30 seconds were careful probing, both fighters respecting the other's ability. Then Brul'thar attacked, a fast jab with his upper left arm, followed by a sweeping hook from his lower right. Cassidy ducked the jab, parried the hook, and countered with a low kick to his lead leg. The kick connected solidly, and I saw Brul'thar's expression flicker with surprise. That had actually hurt. They reset. Brul'thar attacked again, this time using all four arms in a coordinated assault that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Cassidy moved through the storm of limbs like she could see the future, slipping, ducking, redirecting, and always countering. Every exchange ended with her landing at least one strike. 5 minutes in, Brul'thar was breathing hard. Cassidy looked fresh. This was the endurance factor revealing itself. Brul'thar was stronger, but human cardiovascular systems were insane. They could maintain high output for extended periods that would exhaust most species. 10 minutes. Brul'thar's movements were slowing, his guard dropping incrementally. The accumulated damage from dozens of precise strikes was taking its toll. His legs, his ribs, his arms, all showing signs of trauma. Cassidy pressed her advantage. She had been studying him, learning his patterns, and now she was exploiting them. Every time he threw his upper left jab, she countered to his exposed ribs. Every time he went for a grapple, she attacked his knees. She was systematically breaking down his defense. 15 minutes. Brul'thar tried a desperation move, lunging forward with all four arms spread to tackle her to the ground, where his weight advantage would be decisive. Cassidy waited until the last possible moment, then pivoted and used his own momentum against him, redirecting him past her and adding a strike to the back of his knee as he went by. Brul'thar crashed to the ground. Before he could recover, Cassidy was on him, had his upper right arm hyperextended in a joint lock that looked agonizing. She had positioned herself where his other three arms could not reach her, using his own body as a shield. "Yield," she said quietly, but the arena microphones picked it up. Brul'thar struggled for a moment, testing the lock, but she had the perfect position. He could not escape without tearing his own shoulder apart. The champion of the Galactic Gauntlet, undefeated for 3 cycles, made a decision. He tapped out. The arena went absolutely insane. Beings were on their feet, shouting, cheering, arguing, and celebrating. The noise was overwhelming. Cassidy released the lock immediately, rolled to her feet, and offered Brul'thar her hand. He stared at it, then up at her, then took it. She helped him up, and they stood there together, the new champion and the old. "You were right," Brul'thar said, his voice carrying respect. "I was predictable. You are a worthy champion, Cassidy Raines." The referee raised Cassidy's arm. "Winner and new supreme warrior, Cassidy Raines of Earth." I sat back in my seat, my analysis equipment forgotten, and just watched as this human, this tiny representative of a species we had dismissed as weak and irrelevant, accepted her championship. The implications were staggering. If one human could do this, what could trained human warriors do? What did this mean for galactic military planning? In the post-fight interview, someone asked Cassidy how it felt to be the first human to win the gauntlet. "It feels like a beginning," she said. "Humans are not the strongest species, or the fastest, or the toughest. But we are adaptable. We learn. We overcome. And we never, ever quit. The galaxy should probably remember that." I filed my report that night, and I made sure to emphasize one critical point. Humans were not to be underestimated. Not in combat, not in any arena. They were deathworlders in the truest sense, survivors who had clawed their way to the top of their planet's food chain through intelligence, adaptability, and sheer bloody-minded determination. Cassidy Raines had just taught the galaxy that lesson in the most public, most humiliating way possible for every species that had laughed at her. And I guarantee you, every military strategist, every combat analyst, every being with any sense was revising their assessment of humanity. Because if one human could dominate the gauntlet, what could an army of them do? I do not know about you, but I am very glad the humans seem to prefer diplomacy. Because I have seen what happens when they decide to fight, and it is absolutely terrifying. Welcome to the new galaxy. The one where humans are competitors. May your ancestors protect you if you ever have to face one in combat. Subscribe to my channel for more sci-fi stories.